Hello, my name is Helena and this video provides a short report on some of the findings of a project called Trends and Challenges for the Moderation of End-to-End Encrypted Communication in Zimbabwe. This project came about as a sister project to the Horizon study, Everything in Moderation, so I'll mention that study first. Everything in Moderation looked at online communications in end-to-end encrypted context. So when people use end-to-end encrypted platforms such as WhatsApp, Telegram and Signal, these are more private spaces for communication because only the sender and recipient of a message are able to see the content of that message. So the platforms themselves are unable to access the content of what's being sent compared to some other social media platforms. So in Everything in Moderation, we were interested to find out when people use these end-to-end encrypted platforms to communicate, what kind of behaviours do they use as they communicate with each other, and what are the consequences for moderation. So we think of moderation in terms of dealing with content such as misinformation, fake news, hate speech, online harassment, and so on. What does the use of an end-to-end encrypted platform mean in legal terms of dealing with that content, in terms of what platforms are able to do to deal with content, and in terms of what users themselves do to regulate the content they post themselves and to regulate the content that other posters post as well. So in Everything in Moderation, we were looking at these questions from a UK context, and then we started to wonder what we could learn by looking at practices in a country where the use of an end-to-end encrypted app is far more widespread than it is in the UK. And this led us to partnering with Zimbabwe, since the use of WhatsApp in Zimbabwe is hugely widespread. So we were really delighted to be able to conduct a sister project for Everything in Moderation, which was called Trends and Challenges for the Moderation of End-to-End Encrypted Communication in Zimbabwe. This project was funded through the Global Challenges Research Fund and conducted in partnership with the Harare Institute of Technology in Zimbabwe, led there by Mr. Calvin Magari. So our starting point for this project was to realise that we're interested in different possibilities for the moderation of end-to-end encrypted communication, and to ask what can we learn about this by exploring the conduct of online communication in a country where the use of an end-to-end encrypted platform is already widespread. So Calvin and his team in Zimbabwe conducted 21 interviews with professionals across Zimbabwe who were all experts in relation to online communication or the moderation of online communication. So in the remainder of this video, I'm going to talk very briefly about some of our emerging findings from this interview work. So we asked, how is WhatsApp used and moderated in Zimbabwe? What can we learn about moderation that might transfer to a UK context or a European context by looking at what we learned about Zimbabwe? And I'm going to talk about our findings in relation to three key areas: the widespread popularity of WhatsApp and its uses, the reasons for the popularity of WhatsApp, and challenges in content and the moderation of content. And then I'll briefly finish by talking about some ways forward, some conceptual ideas that we're taking forward as we analyse this data further. But first of all, some background information about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a country in the southern part of Africa with a population of just under 17 million people, 60% of whom live in rural areas. It has 16 official languages and has a limited telecommunications infrastructure. So for instance, it can be difficult to get a Wi-Fi connection. It's a requirement that if you purchase a SIM card, you have to register it before you're able to use it on your phone. So this means you need to provide the telecommunication provider with information relating to your name, address, gender, and national identity number. Up to 90% of the population have a mobile phone, and many people access the internet through their mobile phones. In particular, it's extremely popular to buy data bundles to access online platforms, and you can buy bundles specifically for WhatsApp. And this can be cheaper than certain other data bundles. So in many ways, WhatsApp is the default app that's used in Zimbabwe, so much so that it's estimated that half of internet traffic in Zimbabwe is through WhatsApp. So this is something that was really echoed in our interview findings. So the first theme that I'll talk about from our findings is the widespread popularity of WhatsApp and its uses. So everyone we spoke to in the study referred to WhatsApp as by far the most popular platform for online communication. So as I said, the default app that people use to get online. Other platforms that were mentioned were those that we're familiar with in the UK as well: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and TikTok, and also an Africa-specific app called Sasai, which is also end-to-end encrypted, but less popular, perhaps because it's newer and hasn't had time to embed itself onto the market. When we spoke to our participants, what we noticed was that the uses that they described for WhatsApp extend far beyond the kind of social communication that we're familiar with WhatsApp use in the UK. So in the UK, we often think of using WhatsApp for individual conversations with friends, group conversations with friends, social clubs and so on. But our respondents in Zimbabwe talked about business and institutional uses as well. So for marketing, sales, banking, internal and external communications. And here are a few quotes from our interviews to illustrate this. So one participant working in the retail industry told us, for the various organisations, obviously the main platform for the present time has been WhatsApp. You've got WhatsApp bots now, and then you've even got your customer care issues being handled over WhatsApp platforms. WhatsApp is something that has now taken over most of the organisations, let's call it our public relations. It then incorporates other functions of that organisation. For example, that could be marketing, that could be sales. Another participant working at the Ministry of Justice told us probably we talk of WhatsApp as a social but also a professional platform, especially here in Zimbabwe. You know, we have an employees group and information can only be viewed by those employees. Another participant worked at a child protection organisation. So here, when they were talking to clients, they were often talking about very sensitive matters. So the end-to-end encrypted nature of WhatsApp was a definite benefit for them, so they could use it for their conversations. Because of the nature of work that we do within our organisation, it's very sensitive information. And sometimes the kind of information that we happen to have with our clients is so sensitive that we don't need any third party to happen to get their hands on that information anyhow. Some of our participants in the study also worked at universities as lecturers, and they told us about using WhatsApp for these educational purposes. So we try to use quite a variety of social media. We use WhatsApp for communications, teaching and learning. They also sometimes found that WhatsApp could be a backup platform if other platforms prove to be less accessible for students. So one lecturer told us, the university will be encouraging you to restrict yourself to be using Google platforms, right? After that, you only have perhaps 20 something at most learners, and you know you have 120 in the module, right? So we have learners who come from disadvantaged backgrounds likely. So sometimes out of just being concerned about learners, you then end up encouraging them to create the WhatsApp group class for the class where perhaps material can be posted. And this leads us very neatly onto the reasons for the popularity of WhatsApp. Most of our participants told us that the reasons for its popularity related to convenience and cost rather than its end-to-end encrypted status. So WhatsApp has many different functions within it. You can have a one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many conversation over text. You can send images, you can send videos, you can have video calls with people. So you can do many different things all in one app. And it's an app that doesn't require a particularly expensive smartphone for use either. So it can really be very, very convenient and far more accessible in terms of cost and requirements for access than certain other platforms. And this was summed up by one of our participants who said WhatsApp primarily made its inroads, I guess, throughout Africa, but also mainly in Zimbabwe because of its low cost use, data uses, and its ability to replace the SMS. When it first introduced as an instant messaging platform and eventually incorporating such things as video calling, conference calling, and obviously things like your statuses, your sharing of videos, sharing of pictures, and information in there that definitely gave it relevance. Unlike in the American community as such, where there are a lot more platforms, and obviously you don't have access challenges with data. They have a lot more options in terms of platforms that they can use, so that's how WhatsApp obviously made its inroads. And far more succinctly, another participant told us, WhatsApp is very easy to use. Even the grannies in our villages, they're able to use WhatsApp. So for most of our participants, the end-to-end encrypted status of WhatsApp wasn't seen as a reason for its use. It could perhaps sometimes be a useful feature, but the prime motivations for people using WhatsApp related to its convenience and cost. So one participant told us, okay, where I say the popularity of WhatsApp, as I've highlighted, mainly is on the cost. It's very cheap to use. The element of end-to-end encryption mainly to do with security. In Zimbabwe, what can I say? Most people are not conscientized to do with security. They could just use any other platform using text messages, voice calls, and so forth and so on. What we did note is that some of our participants worked in fields that were quite cybersecurity focused, and they mentioned a growing popularity of Telegram and Signal, which are two other end-to-end encrypted apps that are far more secure than WhatsApp in certain ways. And they refer to them as growing in popularity in WhatsApp, but no amongst certain groups in the population, but to nowhere near the extent of WhatsApp's popularity across the whole population. The next thing that we looked at related to content challenges and moderation. So we asked our participants about the kind of challenging content that gets posted on WhatsApp and in social media in Zimbabwe in general. And they told us about the same kind of challenges that we observe here in the UK. So large amounts of misinformation, hate speech, cyberbullying, revenge pornography, body shaming, and so on. At the time in which our data were collected, it was a run-up to a presidential election in Zimbabwe. So a few of our participants also pointed out that often this online content is quite polarised in political forms, with opponents and supporters of different political groups aiming messages at each other in quite inflammatory ways. What they also noted was that this kind of challenging content gets posted across all different kinds of social media platforms. Perhaps there are some features of WhatsApp that enable it to spread more quickly than across other platforms. So, for instance, relating to the ability to share messages on WhatsApp, and also the lack of fact-checking on WhatsApp compared to other platforms as well, means that misinformation isn't picked up. So a few quotes on the slide here illustrate this. So one participant told us, the biggest challenge we've realised is people tend to rely on chatbots on WhatsApp as a source of news, which these are not your standard publishing houses where you expect them to work within an ethos, because these are just people who have a market or a voice, and they share whatever they believe is gospel. Another one told us, I know we are so fast in forwarding messages. We're in a kind of competition to be the first to post that message. We do not check if that message came from an authentic source or not. So there is no accountability where the messages are originating or the extent to which they are spreading. And another one on the theme of fact-checking told us, unlike Facebook, some platforms like it probably they would flag that content as false through fact-checking, but there's no fact-checking on WhatsApp. So misinformation is being spread through WhatsApp groups. So again, the same as in a UK context, we can see that there are lots of challenges with the content that's being posted, and certain ways in which WhatsApp itself, the features of WhatsApp, can enable that content to get perhaps posted very quickly, shared very quickly, and also a lack of an ability to be able to pick up content and perhaps label it as false before it can get shared. We also looked into different kind of moderation mechanisms on WhatsApp, beginning with legal moderation or government moderation. And we noted that just as in the UK, where there are legal mechanisms that can deal with content that's posted online, they also exist in Zimbabwe as well. In particular, in the introduction of a Data Protection Act in 2021 that deals with cybersecurity issues around the posting of content online, as well as data protection issues. And also noting that the government has taken other steps in some circumstances to deal with online content, including the shutdown of internet access in 2019 in response to protests that were occurring at the time. We also looked at moderation in terms of moderation on the platform itself. And what we noted was that our interviewees talked about WhatsApp as able to protect privacy, but relying on reporting and admins to deal with the regulation of content. So one participant told us, I think WhatsApp has done quite an amazing job in ensuring its policies through features that come with the app. Like, for example, if they can put a feature of sending a picture that you would want someone to open only once. Another one told us WhatsApp is a bit tricky because it's not got much regulatory arrangements. Unless someone reports you, that's when maybe you can be warned or banned. And this was picked up again by another participant. What we've gathered in Zimbabwe is that in WhatsApp groups, whenever a new person is added to a WhatsApp group after their rules, they're informed of by the administrator, for example, there's no hate speech, we don't talk politics, we don't chat at night after 10 p.m. These are some of the rules that I've seen in WhatsApp groups. But of course, some of the WhatsApp groups are very irresponsible. And here we found the same things that we found in Everything in Moderation, that you have these WhatsApp groups and there's very little the platform itself does in terms of moderating the content, and it relies on people who are running the groups to be able to take steps to regulate the content. This could be something that is difficult to achieve. Something else that we also found very interesting when talking to our participants was a couple of them mentioned difficulties around automated moderation. So for instance, algorithmic mechanisms that can identify hate speech being posted or misinformation being posted. And talking about a Zimbabwean context or a non-Western context, the difficulties that are raised from this, you remember that we said Zimbabwe has 16 official languages. It also has several unofficial languages. So this participant told us an algorithm that basically filters every single hate speech or every form of potential hate speech. So that makes it very difficult in the non-Western world for us to actually deal with this. And in many, many cases, you'll find it being shared or propagated in the native language, which has been a challenge. So this was something very interesting to us. So we noticed some of the same moderation challenges across Zimbabwe and the UK, but then also some challenges that relate specifically to a Zimbabwean or a non-Western context. So now we have all these very interesting findings. We're trying to put them together and make sense of them in a conceptual way. In particular, we're asking how can we make sense of the fact that people are using the same platform, so people in the UK and Zimbabwe are using the same WhatsApp, but they have such different uses of it. So in Zimbabwe, a much more widespread use in terms of the number of people using the app and how they're using the app. So how can we account for these differences, and how can we account for the very specific challenges to moderation that we observe as well, which can differ across these contexts too? So starting to think through these in a conceptual way, we've turned to a concept from science and technology studies and critical geography known as digital territorialization, which refers to the creation, maintenance and recreation of digital spaces. In particular, we're very interested in the idea that we can think of corporate digital territories and nation-state digital territories. So we can begin to understand what's happening if we think of WhatsApp as being a corporate digital territory that exists across the globe and is kind of marked out by its very well-known logo, and also marked out in terms of the particular provisions that the platform provides for users. And then you have places in which this corporate digital territory overlaps with specific nation-state territories. So you have the nation-state digital territory of Zimbabwe, which creates certain circumstances in relation to the particular communications infrastructure that's set up, the particular regulations around communication, so in terms of registering SIM cards, the legal framework set out in the Data Protection Act and elsewhere, the previous use of internet shutdowns and so on, all of which foster a certain kind of approved use of online communications. And we can begin to understand that where a corporate digital territory overlaps with a specific nation-state territory, this creates the very specific circumstances we see and can help us to understand the differences between WhatsApp use in the UK, for instance, versus WhatsApp use in Zimbabwe. So this is a concept we want to take forward as we move through the work further, and in particular to help us to understand what we increasingly see in tensions between the corporate digital territories and nation-state territories. So we've seen it in the UK, for instance, in relation to the Online Harms Bill, real tensions occurring between what the UK government is trying to achieve in terms of the moderation of end-to-end encrypted platforms, and in terms of what corporate territories or corporations such as WhatsApp are saying in response to that in terms of what they are or are not willing to do with the arrangements of their platform. So this is a concept that we will be taking forward further in the work as we keep going through these interview data. That was just a very quick walkthrough of some of the things that we've been doing. You're very welcome to get in touch if you'd like further information about the project. To finish, I've put the names up of all of the teams involved in both of the projects. So the initial Everything in Moderation project team and the team working on trends and challenges for the moderation of end-to-end encrypted communication in Zimbabwe.